All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. First off, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shah. Shalom to all the brothers and sisters that's tuning in to Yahweh's Camp Wednesday Night Live. I'm Brother Yahshua Ban Yahweh.
Brother Malak Yahweh.
Brother Ephraim.
It's Brother Aniel.
Brother Joshua, the Gadite.
And we got King Yashuv and King Ram in the building. They preoccupied right now.
Shalom, Yahweh Shah, Barakatham, Shalom to Yasha Allah. Yeah, I'm on a roll right now. Let me get situated, but hey, Slakia, go ahead, King.
Khan. And we got Brother Yashuv in the building, man. He preoccupied right now.
I think he's making an avocado sandwich over there.
Yeah, I don't know what he got going on, but we go hop right into it though, man. So for all those that's tuning in tonight, man, we going into Daniel chapter 2, right? So I know a few weeks ago we had went into that Daniel chapter 8 about Daniel's vision going into the ram and the goat. But today we go get into Daniel chapter 2 and go into Nebuchadnezzar's dream, right? So let's get right into it. So can somebody give me Daniel chapter 2? Right. And again, shalom to all the brothers and sisters that's tuning in. Right. Tonight we going into Daniel chapter 2. And if brothers got precepts or, brothers got any info they want to bring out, by all means, bring it out.
Con, you ready to start reading?
Con, for whoever want to read it.
Con, start the book of Daniel.
Yeah, start at 1 and go down to 2.
Con, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 1. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the kings his dreams. So they came and stood before the king.
All right, so let's stop right there. So when I was reading this story the other day, this kind of reminded me of another account that you read about in the scriptures, right? So it says, then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans, right? So can somebody give me Genesis chapter 41, right? Because this story in Daniel, the second chapter, is real similar to another account in the book of Genesis, right?
You want Genesis 41?
Yeah, give me 41 and start at verse 1, right? So it said Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and he commanded to call all his magicians and his astrologers and sorcerers, right? So when you go into that, that's really going into all these different heathen nations. They had different witchcraft and wizardry, right? So when you go into sorcery and astrology and magicians, that's really going into witchcraft, right?
Con.
So today's modern day terms, you know, they got what's that? They got them fortune tellers, right? They got the people that be reading palms. They got the
Mm-hmm.
people that be reading them tarot cards, right? Them people that be using them crystal balls, right? So all
Yeah,
these
reading your
heathen nations,
palms.
right, yeah, palm reading, stuff like that. So all these heathen nations had, you know, different customs where they go into witchcraft and wizardry, right? So let's get that in Genesis 41. Because this account about Nebuchadnezzar is similar to this same account. This, you know, it reminded me about this account in Genesis. So let's get that in whoever want to read in Genesis 41 and we'll start at verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 41, verse 1. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river.
All right, so let's stop right there. So this just like the account that we reading in the book of Daniel, right? So just like Pharaoh had a dream, that's going into like Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, right? So let's jump down to verse. Let me get verse 8.
Con. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt.
Right, so just like Nebuchadnezzar called for all the magicians and the sorcerers, the astrologers, ain't nothing new under the sun. The same thing happened back then during the time of Egypt, right? All these other nations they had different wizards and witches and magicians and sorcerers and whatnot, right? So this is going into we're not gonna read the whole account, but it's going into when Pharaoh had the dream about the seven kine and the 7 ears of corn during the time of Egypt, right? So let's finish reading on.
And all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh.
Right, so it was none of the magicians and the wizards, they couldn't interpret Pharaoh's dream, right? So what you gonna come to find out is that this account in Genesis is real similar to the story that we go read in Daniel. Right, so let's jump to verse 14.
Uh, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon.
So they
And
went and called Salah. So they went and got Joseph, right? So Joseph was one of the children of Jacob, right? So Joseph was an Israelite, right? So out of all these wise men that Pharaoh had, none of these Egyptians could interpret the dream, but he had to go to an Israelite, right? So read on.
and he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it.
Right. So out of all the wise men of Egypt, the Most High set an Israelite over all of them, right, to interpret the dream, right? So that goes to
Crazy.
show you that even in captivity, the Most High was always dealing with the Israelites, even when we was at a lower state, right? And like I said, this account is real similar to the account that we go read in Daniel, right? So let's go back to that in Daniel chapter 2. Let's start at verse 2 again.
Then the king commanded to call the musicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. Keep going.
Yeah, read down to verse 13.
Con. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king of Sislak, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye would not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, Lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean.
Salaki, so just like I said during the time of Egypt, it said the same thing in the book of Genesis, right? So when Pharaoh went to his magicians and all the witches and wizards of Egypt, they couldn't interpret the dream, just like during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, right? So to read on.
Verse 11, and it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain.
Right, so let's stop right there, and let me go to I'm gonna go to Daniel, the first chapter, right? So it said, none of the wise men of Babylon can interpret the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. So he put out a decree to destroy all the wise men of Babylon, including Daniel, right? But we go see why. So this is the book of Daniel. I'm gonna go to chapter 1, and I'm gonna read verse 18, right? So this the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 18. It says, now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm, right? So out of all these men, right, he found the wisest was Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, right? So they were part of the wise men that Nebuchadnezzar set up in Babylon, right? So let's read on.
What was
Verse 14.
14.
Yeah.
Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Archiah, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Archiah, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Archiah made the king known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation.
Right. So Daniel, right, out of all these wise men of Babylon, couldn't none of them show him the interpretation, right? So why did Daniel have so much faith that out of all these men, he would be the one that could show the interpretation? right? I mean, you had all type of magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let me go back to chapter 1, right? So this the book of Daniel, chapter 1 and verse 17. It says, as for these four children, and that's going back to Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, right? It says, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams, right? So that was a blessing that the Most High gave to Daniel, right? It said the Most High gave Daniel the blessing to have interpretations over visions and dreams, right? So that's why Daniel was so confident in breaking down Nebuchadnezzar's dream, right? Because all the astrologers and all the Chaldeans and the wise men of Babylon couldn't break it down, but Daniel understand that the Most High gave him that gift to break down and interpret all the dreams and the visions, right? So let's finish reading on. Let's go down to verse 19.
Come, verse 19. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the Most High of heaven.
Salaki, read from where you stopped at in verse
17.
16. Yeah, kind of.
17. Come. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the Most High of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto David in a night vision.
Salaki.
Daniel, Salakia. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in the night vision. Then Daniel blessed the Most High of heaven.
So let's stop right there, right?
Da-
So it says, then the secret was revealed unto Daniel, right? So out of all these different men of Babylon, the Most High only revealed that secret unto Daniel, right? Just like in the book of Genesis, out of all of the wise men of Egypt, he only revealed the dream and the vision unto Joseph, which was an Israelite, right? So like we said, there ain't nothing new under the sun, right? So even in captivity, the Israelites still had certain blessings that the other nations couldn't have, right? Because the Most High still showed you that he was dealing only with the Israelites. So out of all the wise men of Babylon, the Most High was dealing with Daniel, which was an Israelite, right? So let me get this in the book of Amos real quick. Right. So this the book of Amos, chapter 3 and verse 7. It says, surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. Right? So the Most High God only revealed his secrets to his servants, the prophets. Right? So only the chosen people of the Most High can have the understanding on these visions. Right? So like I said, even in captivity, the Most High showed you that he wasn't dealing with the other nations, even though we was captives in these other nations. He was only dealing with the Israelites, right? So let's read down. We stopped at verse 20. Yeah, go to verse 20 and read down.
Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God for ever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changed the times and the seasons. He removed kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth within him. With him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desire of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in unto Archiot, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Archiot brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, Thou art able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the smooth sailors show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days.
Right, so we
Thy
got a
dream and
Salakia. So right there, that's a part that we have to highlight. Right, that's a key part.
come.
It says, but there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. So that lets you know whatever vision that Nebuchadnezzar had is gonna be symbolizing what's gonna happen in the latter days, right? So read on, King.
Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation of the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thine heart. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness and excellence was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible.
Salaki, so let's stop right there, right? So Ephraim, can you pull up that picture I sent you?
Con.
Right. So it says, now we get into the actual vision, right? It says, Thou, O king, sawest. That's the one I sent you?
No. Let me pull it up.
It says, Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. And this great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible, right? So we go try to pull that image up, right? To get a view and understand what's going on.
Yeah, that sucker small. That's why. I'll just zoom in.
Right? You see, you could zoom in on it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a depiction of what Daniel was going into, right? So we just wanted to give the viewers a visual, right? So Daniel said that he seen a great image, right? So let's read down and see what this great image was, and we go into it.
Verse 32. This image head was of fine gold, his
Right.
breast.
So let's stop right there. So with this, his image was on fine gold, right? So we got the picture up, right? And it's finna break it down and go into this actual image. All right, so let's read on.
His breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay.
Right, so let's stop
Thou
right there, right? So let's
come.
stop right there. So this image, like we got the picture pulled up, it said this image, right? Head was of fine gold, right? His breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay, right? So this was something I was meditating on real heavy a few days ago when I was reading over this, right? So when you look at this image, right, Daniel was breaking down this image from top to bottom, right? So when you go in and you look at this image, and this is something I was meditating on, right? When you look at all the different metals that symbolized in this image, when you start from top to bottom, it really gets lesser in value, right? So at the top of the image, you have gold, right? And then you go down and it goes into silver, right? So when you know about the different metals, a silver is not as valuable as gold, right?
Uh,
And then when you go into the brass, which is under the silver, then it gets even lesser because brass is not as valuable metal as silver, right? And then it gets to the iron part, right? So these different layers of this image, the value of the metal gets lower and lower, right? And
It's
then
like
it said,
cheaper.
right. So and then it said, verse 33, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. So, and this is something else I was meditating on, right? So the top is the most valuable part because Daniel, when he explained it, it went from top to bottom, right? But when you look at the bottom of the image, which is the foundation, is really the weakest part of the image, right?
come.
Because it said his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part clay, right? So when you look at the feet, that's really the foundation of the image is its weakest part. And then the top of the image is the strongest part of the image, right? Because gold is the most valuable metal out of all the different metals, right? So I was thinking about that, right? That's like if I'm building a building, a 20-foot story building, and then the base of the building or the foundation is real weak. How long is that building gonna last? Right? It's not gonna last for too long. If I'm making a 20, 30-story building and I have a weak foundation, that means that building is destined to be destroyed. It's not gonna last for too long. It don't have a foundation, right?
On solid foundation.
A solid foundation. So it's not built to last for too long, right? So if
Come.
you go back to that image, right? Going back to that image, the foundation of the image is its weakest point, right? So anything with a weak foundation is not really built to last for too long, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. That's something I was meditating on when we was going through all these different metals of the image, right? Because I was thinking, shoot, the image don't even have a solid foundation. The foundation is its weakest point, right? So let's read that part again, starting at verse 31.
Come. Verse 31. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay.
Right, so we have an image, right, and all the layers of the image. Daniel was breaking it down. So you got the head is gold, then you got the silver part, you got the brass, the iron, and then you got the feet is iron and clay, right? So let's read on.
Come, verse 34. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them to pieces.
Right, so let's stop right there,
Then,
right? So we trying to get a visual of what's going on. So you had this great image, and we just pulled up the picture, right? So then it says, "Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands," right? So you have this great and terrible image, right? And then you have a stone, and then it said the stone which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay. So remember what I was going into about the foundation, right? So you had the stone, then you said the stone smote the image at its weakest point, right? Because like I said, the foundation of the image is the weakest of the image, right? So you had this stone that smote the image at its weakest point, right? And break them to pieces, right? So let's read down to verse 35.
hey, could somebody else pick up there? I kind of lost. I had something I had to check on real quick. I kind of lost the page where I was reading.
Khan. The book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 35. It says, "Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth."
Right, so let's stop right there. So now we finna get into the actual vision and go into some history and see exactly what does this mean that Daniel was going into, right? So just to do a quick breeze through of what was going on, Daniel seen this great image, right? That was made of gold, silver, brass, iron, and then the foundation was made of iron and clay. And then he said he seen a stone that smote the image and then it broke the whole image. And then he said that stone became a great mountain, right? So we finna go into it and see exactly what is this talking about, right? So somebody give me keep reading on.
Come on, I got verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thy hand, and have made thee ruler over them all. Thou art his head of gold.
Right, so let's
Thou
stop
art
right
his head
there.
of gold.
Right, so let's stop right there, right? So now Daniel is interpreting the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and now he letting him know that the head that was made of gold represents Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom, right? He said, "Thou art this head of gold." And remember, when we was going into the different metals of the image, the gold was the most valuable part, right?
Come.
So now he's saying he told Nebuchadnezzar that thou art this head of gold, right? So that represents Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom, which would be the Neo Babylonian Empire, right? So let's go into a few precepts to go into this. Can somebody give me Jeremiah 46:1? And can somebody else give me Isaiah 14 and verse 4? Right? So when you go and look at the history, Nebuchadnezzar was really one of the, if you, a lot of scholars say that Nebuchadnezzar was one of the most powerful individuals in world history, right? When you look at all the different kingdoms of the earth, you had different kings during different time periods, right? But Nebuchadnezzar was one of the most powerful individuals in world history, right? He was a straight a monarch, right? Or a tyrant, right?
Yeah.
So he conquered different lands. When you look at Nebuchadnezzar, I think he reigned for about 40 plus years, right? And you can read about Nebuchadnezzar obviously in the book of Daniel, but also in the book of Jeremiah, right? The book of Judith, First Esdras, right? Many different books in the scriptures, right? Right. So let's somebody got that in Jeremiah.
Was that 46:1?
Let me get there real quick.
This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 46, verse 1. The word of the Lord which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Gentiles, against Egypt, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Chalcium, which Nebuchadnezzar, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah.
Right, so that's going into that's it right there. So that's going into some of the lands that was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, right? Because we all know that the previous kingdom before the Babylonians was the Assyrians, right? So Nebuchadnezzar conquered the land of Assyria. He conquered Egypt, like we just read in Jeremiah 46, right? So when Nebuchadnezzar came into power, he conquered over many different lands and nations, right? And like I said, even the scholars will tell you that Nebuchadnezzar was really one of the most powerful individuals in world history. When you look at all the different kings that reigned upon the face of the earth, right? So could somebody do somebody got that in Isaiah 14?
What we going 14 and what? At the top?
Nah, let me get Isaiah 14 and start at verse 4 and read down to 6.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 4, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how have the oppressive ceased? The golden cry ceased.
The golden
verse 5,
city.
The golden city ceased. Verse 5, the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruleth the nations in anger,
Hold on,
is
read
persecuted.
that part. Read verse 6 again from the top, Malak.
He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruleth the nations in anger, is persecuted.
Right, so it says, he who smote the people with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, right? So that's really going into Nebuchadnezzar during the time of his reign, and that's talking about all the different nations and the kings that he conquered over, right? It says he that ruled the nations in anger, right? Because when you look at the nature of Nebuchadnezzar, he was a tyrant, right? He was a monarch, right? So finish off verse 6.
Is persecuted and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet.
That's it on that. Right. So let me get
Con.
this other precept real quick too. Right. So I'm gonna go to Jeremiah 4:7. Right. Matter of fact, I'm gonna start at verse 5. Right. Right. So everybody that's familiar with Jeremiah was a prophet that prophesied to the southern kingdom, right? Because the Lord told Jeremiah that for the sins of Judah, he was gonna send the Chaldeans into Jerusalem to destroy Jerusalem and take the southern kingdom in captivity, right? So this the book of Jeremiah, chapter 4 and verse. I'm gonna start at verse 5. It says, "Declare ye in Judah and publish in Jerusalem, and say, blow ye the trumpet in the land. Cry, gather together, and say, assemble yourselves, and let us go into the defense cities. Set up the standard toward Zion. Retire, stay not, for I will bring evil from the north and a great destruction. The lion is come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way." Right? So it said the destroyer of the Gentiles. So that's going into the Chaldeans and Nebuchadnezzar's army, right? So Nebuchadnezzar had the title as the destroyer of the Gentiles, because like I said, he conquered over Assyria, Egypt, all different lands and regions that was in that area, right? It says the lion is come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. He is gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy city shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. Right? So like Daniel was going into about that image, he said the head of gold, he told Nebuchadnezzar that was talking about him and his kingdom, right? Because, like we said, when you look at world history, Nebuchadnezzar, during the time of the Babylonian Empire, he was one of the top rulers that ever ruled upon the face of the earth, right? It says back in Isaiah, it said he that ruled the nations in anger, right? And in Jeremiah, the 4th chapter, it called him the destroyer of the Gentiles, right? So let's go back to that in Daniel.
Con. Verse 35.
Let's read 34 again.
Con. Verse 34. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, and the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we would tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beast of the field and the fowl of the heavens have he given into thy hand, and have made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold.
Right, so like we just went into, Nebuchadnezzar is that head of gold in the
Uh,
Neo-Babylonian Empire, right? So now Daniel is breaking down the vision and the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, right? So remember the gold really out of all the different metals that Daniel explained that was in a part of the image, the gold was the most valuable out of all the different metals, right? And that was the one that was at the top, right? So now we finna go down to the silver part. Cause remember it said that Verse 32, it says, this image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver. Right. So now let's get into the silver part. So let's read down to verse 39.
39. Come. Verse 39. And after these shall arise another kingdom.
Right. So let's stop. Let's stop right there. So it says, and after these shall rise another kingdom. Right. So now it really gets simple when you go into it. Because if you know world history, then you know what kingdom came after the Babylonians, right? So when you look at world history, right? Matter of fact, I'm gonna just get the scripture real quick, right? I'm gonna go to Daniel chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 22, right? So now Daniel said that the head of gold represented Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire, and now the silver part, he said that's the kingdom that came after the Babylonian Empire, right? So this the book of Daniel chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 22. It says, and thou his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not nor hear, nor know the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written, and this is the writing that was written. Many, many tekel you for sin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many, God have numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians, right? So in Daniel the 5th chapter, this was talking about King Belshazzar, right? So when you look at world history, Belshazzar was the last king or last major king of the Babylonians, right? So it says in verse 28, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians, right? So that's letting you know after the Babylonians, after the last king of the Babylonians, you had the Medes and the Persians that reigned and came into power, right? So let's go back to that in Daniel chapter 2 and what was we at, verse 39. So let me read that again, because in this chapter it don't necessarily name the kingdom, right? It says after verse 39 in Daniel chapter 2, it says, and after thee shall arise another kingdom. So he told Nebuchadnezzar after the Babylonians it was gonna reign another kingdom, but he didn't necessarily name that other kingdom, right? So that's where you have to do research and go into the history to see what kingdom ruled after the Babylonians, right? And we just brought that out in Daniel chapter 5. After the last king of Babylon, you had the Persians and the Medes. And even in the book of Daniel, and when you look at world history, after the Babylonians, you had the Achaemenid Empire. And we went into that a few weeks ago when we was going over Daniel chapter 8 about the ram and the goat, right? So after Babylon, you had King Cyrus, right, that reigned over the Persians and the Medes, right? Right, so verse 39, it says, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, right? So it said inferior to thee, because like I said, when you look at the image, you had the gold, right? And then you had the less valuable metal and the silver, right? So even though the Persians and the Medes conquered over Babylon, when you look at their kingdom as individuals, none of them was as powerful as Nebuchadnezzar at that time, right? All the great kings you had of Persia and Media during their individual reigns, ain't none of them had the power as Nebuchadnezzar, right? Because like I said, when you look at the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, he was really a monarch, right? So he was the main one that was in control of the government of the Babylonians. So that's what you would call like a monarchy. But most of the kingdoms that reigned after Babylon, they was pretty much set up in the what you would call a constitutional monarch or a democratic monarch, right? So let me bring this out in Daniel chapter 6 real quick. Right, so this is the book of Daniel chapter 6 and verse 1. It says, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom, and this is Darius that reigned over the Persians and the Medes, right? It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which would be over the whole kingdom, and over these three presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage, right? This Slack, it says, then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm, right? And I'm gonna jump to verse 7 in Daniel chapter 6. It says, all the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, right? So when you look at the setup of the Persian and the Mede Empire, of course they had a main king that was in charge, but they also had presidents, they had governors and princes set up, right? So you have more people that was in charge than just the king, right? But when you look at Babylon, like I said, that was more of a monarchy, right? With Nebuchadnezzar being the head of the operation, right? So let's go back to that in Daniel chapter 2 in verse 39. Right. So now we went into the silver part, and then after the silver, we had the brass, right? So that head of gold represent Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, and then you had the silver, which represented the Persians and the Medes, and now we finna get into the brass part, right? So Malak, can you read verse 39 again, Baba Kushah?
Verse 39. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass,
Right.
which
So
shall bear the
right. Matter of fact, finish that off.
which shall bear rule over all the earth.
Right. So it says, and another third kingdom. Right. So like I said, if you understand world history, right, then you would know what kingdoms this is talking about, because it's not specific in this chapter, right? He not necessarily naming off all these different kingdoms. So now that we know that the head of gold is talking about Babylon, then you'll just have to go into world history to know what kingdoms came after Babylon in what order, right? So it says, and after these shall arise another kingdom. So after Babylon, you had the Persians and the Medes, and then after the Persians and the Medes, the third kingdom that would be talking about the Greeks. And like I said, we went into this a few weeks ago when we went into the vision about the ram and the goat, right? Because Daniel he didn't necessarily say the Greeks in this chapter. He get more into detail in chapter 8, but in this chapter you have to break it down and go into the history, right? So let me get can somebody give me that in First Maccabees? We're gonna go over that in First Maccabees again. First Maccabees 1:1.
Con, this is First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1.
Shot. Is that Amat?
Con,
I ain't even see you hop on. Shalom, King.
Shalom.
All right, so let me get to that in First Maccabees 1:1, and we gonna read down to verse 4.
Con. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out the land of Chittim, had smited Darius, king of Persia and Medes.
Right, so Salakia, let's stop right there. So, like we went over this a few weeks ago, going into the vision of the ram and the goat. After the Persians and the Medes, you had the Greeks, right? So it says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. Because we went into the history about the Greco-Persian Wars a few weeks ago, right? So that Darius that's mentioned in First Maccabees is talking about Darius the third, right? So he was like the last main ruler of the Persians and the Medes, right? So let's read on.
Con, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. Hey, Salaki, doesn't that go into Daniel 8 and 9 where it's about the little horn?
Kanye, we brought that out. Yeah, that's talking about the goat. Yeah, the
Yeah.
goat. We brought that out a few weeks ago. Cause in Daniel the second chapter, he don't necessarily name the kingdoms that came after Babylon. So we have to go into it and break it down. Cause in chapter 8, it tell you that the ram was talking about the Persians, and then the Greeks was talking about the goat. It said the kings of Grecia, right? So let's read on.
Verse 2. And made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. 3. And went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations. So much so that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. Verse 4. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributes unto him.
So that's it on that, right? So that was just going into the different accounts, because like I said in Daniel chapter 2, it don't necessarily name off the kingdom, so you have to go into history and go into the scriptures to break down what kingdoms rule in what order, right? So like we read in Daniel chapter 5, it tell you that the Persians and the Medes came into power after they took over Belshazzar. So Belshazzar was the last main ruler of Babylon, right? And now in the book of Maccabees, it tell you that Alexander and the Greeks came into power after they conquered the Persians and the Medes. And the last main ruler of the Persians and the Medes was Darius the third, right? So when you go into the Greeks, like we went over a few weeks ago, you had Alexander, and then you had the four that came after him, which would be the Diadochi, right? You had Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, Antagonist, and then you had other rulers down the line like Lysimachus. Then we went over Antiochus, right? So you had the different rulers of the Greeks, right? So let's go back to that in Daniel chapter 2.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise.
All right, so let's stop right there, right? So now we getting into the fourth kingdom, right? So hey Ephraim, can you pull that image back up for me real quick? Man, this brother done put about 10 different images. What happened? What happened to the? What happened to the last one?
I'm just trying to get his. I'm trying to get his good side.
Like, yeah, you be on point. Whatever picture you need.
Right.
Exactly.
All praises, right? So we already covered the top, right? So you got the head of gold representing Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonian Empire, right? Then we got the silver part going into the Persians and the Medes, right? Like the brother pointed out, he got a close up. He got the close up, right? So you got the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Medes, right? Then we go to the brass and we got the Greeks. And now we finna get into the iron, right? So like we said, when you go into the world history, you will know that after the Greek Empire, you had the Roman Empire, right? So that would be the fourth kingdom that Daniel was talking about. Because like I said, Daniel is not he's not naming off these different kingdoms, right? He just said it would be a second kingdom, a third kingdom, and a fourth kingdom. But you would have to know world history to go into these different kingdoms, right? Right. So when you look at the Roman Empire, right, one of the main rulers or the first ruler of the Roman Empire, you had Caesar Augustus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So matter of fact, Ethan, can you pull that up, right? Caesar Augustus, right? Also known as Octavian. Right. So when you go into you understand the history of the Romans, majority of their leaders had the name as Caesar. Right. That's what they would call their leaders, Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you got Caesar Augustus, right? So right, it says also known as Octavian, right? So you got Caesar Augustus, right? Then you got after Caesar Augustus, you had Tiberius, right? You had Tiberius Caesar, right? So that's going into the iron, right? So we went over the second kingdom, the Persians and the Medes, right? Then you had the Greeks, which would be the third kingdom, the brass. Now you got the Romans, right? The iron. Right? You got
Tiberius. This was around Christ.
right.
Yeah.
And
After the birth.
matter of fact, we go get some scriptures on that, right? You right. Because like we said, like we went over a few weeks ago, for people that truly don't understand the Bible, because hey, the pastor, he not gonna break this stuff down for you in the church.
Hell no.
In the church, our people think that this is a book of religion. They still, they think this is just a religious book. But the Bible is literally a world history book. I mean, you can't get no more in depth than this, right? You can go outside of the Bible. You could go outside of the Bible and go to any history book, go to any library and read a world history book, and it literally tell you about all the people that's mentioned in the Bible, right? You could read a world history book and you could read about Nebuchadnezzar. You could read about all the pharaohs of Egypt. You could read about Shalmaneser and Sennacherib and all the kings of Assyria, right? You could read about Alexander the Greek, Seleucus, Ptolemy, right?
Salakia. The only world in school, world history makes sense is when you compare it to the.
What you say, Ken? You was breaking up.
Oh, Salakia. I said the only time world history actually made sense that you learn in school is as if you compare it with the Bible.
Big con.
Where you can
Right.
times
Right, right. So it tell you that when you look up the history, you had Caesar Augustus, right, that came into power, and his end reigned. Uh, his reign ended about was 14 A.D. And then after him, you had Tiberius, and he
37,
reigned.
and then Sluggy, go ahead. No, and then Tiberius, and then Caligula.
Right, right. So his reign ended around 37 A.D. Right, right. And like you said, these rulers of all these different nations is mentioned in the Bible and in world history. Right, world history will tell you about Nebuchadnezzar, Alexander the Greek, King Cyrus and Darius, Xerxes. Right, they got different movies and different history books about these people. Tiberius, Caesar Augustus, and like Ephraim brought out, all these people was mentioned in the scriptures, right? And we go into it. Let me get can somebody give me Salakia? Can somebody give me Luke 2:1? And can somebody else give me John 19:13? Can I get Luke 2:1 first?
This is the book of Luke, chapter 2, verse 1. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus.
Wait, from who? Read that again.
Caesar Augustus.
Caesar Augustus, right? You can't make this. We just showed you this different sculptures that had these different people, right? These are true men. These are real men that you could look up in world history. These people are real life people, right? So these scriptures is not a fairy tale book. This is an actual history book, right? This is called prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, how could Daniel actually predict all these different kingdoms and what would happen during these different kingdoms?
Hey, Salakia, this is called undefeated, as the Bible always is.
Right. So people say, well, how, I don't believe in the Bible. Man wrote that, right? That's man made. It might be man made, but everything was inspired by the Most High God. Cause can't no man predict what's gonna happen upon the face of the earth unless the Most High give him the power to do so, right? So how is Daniel living during the time of the Babylonians, and he's prophesying about all these kingdoms that's gonna come after the Babylonian Empire, right? So read that again in Luke chapter 2.
This is Luke chapter 2, verse 1. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that the whole that the world should be taxed.
Right? So Caesar Augustus, right? You have a historical figure that's mentioned in the Bible, like Ephraim said, during the time of YAHAWAH'S, right? So he was the ruler over Rome, right? And Rome was the fourth kingdom that Daniel was talking about in Daniel chapter 2 that came after the Greeks, right? So who got that in John 19 and 13?
Salakia, real quick, even in the Apocrypha, if you read Bel and the Dragon, it'll tell you how Most High was dealing with Daniel.
Right, come.
You need to know.
Yeah, can somebody give me that in John 19 and 13?
John, I got it. The book of John 19, verse 13. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Yahushua forth and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. You want me to keep going, King?
Con, can you read down to verse 15?
Yeah, and it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he saith unto the Jews, Behold your king. But they cried out, Away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, We have no king but Caesar.
Right? So that's going to the time of Yahawah when he was finna be crucified, right? So just like Ephraim said, these men, these rulers of the Romans are mentioned in the scriptures during the time of Yahawah, right? Like we said, you had Caesar Augustus that we just read about in Luke, the 2nd chapter. Then you had Tiberius Caesar, right? So these men are mentioned in the scriptures, right? So it says, but they cry out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, We have no king but Caesar, right? And like I said, most of the Roman emperors that had the title as Caesar. That's what the Romans used to call their emperors, right? So you had different Caesars. You had Caesar Augustus, you had Tiberius Caesar, right? Going into the reign of the Romans, right?
Like, isn't that how they do the Pope nowadays?
Yeah, kind of. Right.
Then they said we have no king but Caesar. They were kissing butt back then.
Right.
Fear.
So let's go back to that in Daniel. Yep.
I'm gonna read 40 over. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the king shall be divided.
So this is
The kingdom shall be divided.
uh-huh.
But
So let's stop right there, right? So it says the kingdom shall be divided. So remember, the feet that's made out of the iron and the clay, right? Remember, that's the foundation of this image that Daniel is showing Nebuchadnezzar, right? This is the image that Nebuchadnezzar seen in his dream. This is the foundation of the image. And remember, out of all the different metals, this is really the weakest part of the image, right? This is the part of the image that Daniel said that the stones smote and then it broke the whole image, right? So it says this kingdom will be divided, right? So like I said, when you go into world history, because Daniel he's not naming off these different kingdoms. He just letting you know what order is coming. So you have to go into the world history and break down the different order of these different kingdoms, right? So during the time of the Romans, it said the kingdom was divided, right? So you had around the year 286 AD, right? You had a division in the Roman kingdom, right? By a man named Diocletian, right? So during this time, you had Rome was divided. You had the Eastern Roman Empire, then you had the Western Roman Empire, right? During the time of Diocletian, right? So that's that kingdom that was divided. So Malak, can you read the rest of that verse?
Khan, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken.
Right. So let's stop right there. Right. So Ephraim, can you pull up that article I sent you? Right. Because if you know the history about Rome, you had the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire, right? So we go into this article I was reading that really it just give you a quick breeze through, right? For sake of time, we're not gonna break down every single last event that happened during the time of the Romans. But I like this article because it kind of just give you the main points and it's kind of quick with it, right? So what can you give them the source of this article, the website?
Con, what I'll do is I'll throw it in the chat.
Uh-huh.
It's studentsofhistory.com.
Right. So studentsofhistory.com. This was a article I was reading, and it quickly go through the history of the Roman Empire, right? Just to give the viewers some insight. So we just go read this whole article. It ain't too long for whoever want to read it.
You want me to start that off?
Come.
Dividing the Roman Empire into East and West. Growing into one of the largest empires in human history is an incredible achievement. The Roman kingdom, then republic, and then empire gained this status through more than 1,000 years of expansion, conquest, trade, and internal development. Eventually, Rome became so large that the government had difficulty ruling and protecting its vast territory. Many tribes were moving into Roman lands and could not be stopped due to weakening Roman leadership and political instability. In 286 CE, the Emperor Diocletian decided to divide Rome into two sections to try and stabilize the empire. For 100 years, Rome experienced more divisions, and in 395, it finally became the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire. This division changed Roman life and government forever. There were now two emperors in each half, and they governed independently. The capital.
Salakia. Let's stop right there. So now I say it was two different emperors, right? Because when we read in the book of Matthew and we looked at the beginning of the Romans, you just had one leader and one ruler over the kingdom of Rome, right? So we read about Caesar Augustus, and then you had Tiberius, right? So when the kingdom of Rome split, then you had two different. I mean, they were still the same kingdom, but you had two different emperors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's read on.
The capital of the Western Empire was Rome, and the capital of the Eastern Empire was Constantinople.
Right, and that in Constantinople, that's named after we all know Constantine the Great, right?
Constantine.
Right. So you know all those that's viewing, you could go into the history of Constantine. That's who that place was named after. Right.
The
That
one
was
that
named
made
after
Sunday.
right. That was named after Constantine the Great, or who they call Constantine the Great, right? So let's read on.
Following this split, the Eastern Empire thrived. Constantinople was well protected because it was on a peninsula that could be easily defended. It was also located on the frontiers of the empire, allowing imperial armies to respond more easily to external attacks and threats. The Eastern and Western empires had similarities and differences. They both considered themselves Roman and celebrated the history of Rome. Although they governed separately, their forms of government were similar and they enforced some of the same laws. However, as time went on, their differences grew, especially in religion, language, and culture. The Western Empire spoke Latin, while the Eastern Empire spoke Greek. The Western Empire was Roman Catholic and practiced traditional Roman culture. The Eastern Empire was dominated by the Eastern Orthodox religion and had a more diverse cultural influence by different people.
So let's stop right there. So for all those, if you go into the history, the Eastern Empire became the Byzantine Empire when you go into the history, right? Because there was a point of time where Rome fell, and then you had the Byzantine Empire, right? Which was the Eastern Roman Empire, right? So you can read on.
Hey, Salaki, real quick, is that similar to how it was during the Cold War with the East and West Germany?
Say that again.
Mm.
Is that kind of similar to how it was during the Cold War between East and West Germany?
Somewhat. I mean, you could say that somewhat.
Yeah,
But this
they
it
did
didn't
have
really
their
have.
differences.
It
Yeah,
seemed like the more that they grew, or the more that different countries started gaining power, it seemed like the leadership was switching often, and then they started breaking it down into prime ministers, and then like
right.
governors and
And
presidents
so
and
and
all that.
Salaki, that go back to that Daniel chapter 2 when we was reading. That's why Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, they was that head of gold, right? And then Daniel said the kingdom that came after him was inferior to Babylon, even though that they conquered Babylon. All the kingdoms that came after him wasn't as dominant as Nebuchadnezzar during that time. You see what I'm saying? Matter of fact, let me get this real
Con.
quick. Let me get this precept real quick.
And while you getting that precept, I wanted to say that just like how it is in South Korea and North Korea, South Korea is a more or less affiliated with the United States, and North Korea is like affiliated with Russia, and also
Mm-hmm.
in Germany back in the days, Germany, East Germany was affiliated with Russia, and West Germany was affiliated with the United States, but
Mm-hmm.
they're back joined together now.
Okay, Con.
So crazy question, and it probably was Ukraine always Ukraine, or was that Western Germany?
No, I thought they used to be just
Russia. I mean, Slovakia.
I thought
Yeah, all of them was a part of Russia.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's why all those small countries over there around Russia now,
Yeah,
majority of them was a part of the UN,
yeah, the
and when they used to be back in the day, they was a part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, the Soviet Union. But let me bring this out in Second Edges. This Second Edges chapter 14 and verse 16. It says, "For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. For look how much the world shall be weaker through age. So much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein." So, like Ethan was saying, right, when you go into all these nations that came after Babylon, every nation and kingdom became weaker and weaker, right?
Con.
So now you have these different nations and kingdoms, they splitting up, right? You got a ruler on this side, a ruler on that side, then they going to war with each other, right? So at the point of time, it was no individual ruler or king that had as much power and that was more dominant than Nebuchadnezzar at that point in time, right? That's why Daniel said he was that head of gold,
While you
right?
talking about it, it just sounds like more division.
Con.
So let's get back to that article and let's finish that article off.
It says the Western Empire suffered from multiple invasions by barbarian tribes and was finally sacked in 476 CE. Oh man, that's crazy. That's almost around. Hold on. The Eastern Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, survived for almost 1,000 more years before being overtaken by the Ottoman Empire in 1453.
Right. So
Wow.
even that part right there, right, is in the scriptures, right? So that's a prophecy in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says you had the Western Roman Empire, they fell during the time of 476,
Mm-hmm.
right? 476 AD. But you still had the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine, right? They still reigned for 1,000 years, right? Right. So when you go into that history, that really goes into another prophecy, right? Can somebody give me that in Revelation?
20,
Revelation chapter
already
20
there.
and verse 1.
Already there. I was just about
Con,
to bring that sucker out.
yeah, bring that out. And read down to verse 3.
Con. The book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years.
Wait a minute. What did we just read in that article about the history of the Romans?
We just read 476 CE. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
1,000 years. It said that the Western Roman Empire fell, right? And then the Eastern still reigned for 1,000 years, right?
Con.
So let's read on.
And cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled.
So that
And
he shall
after that,
deceive the nations no more until the 1,000 years be fulfilled, right? That's what we just read in that article. So finish that off.
and after that, he must be loosed a little season.
Right. So that when you read that history about the Romans, you finished off that article, right?
Con.
So when you read that history about the Romans in 1,000 years, that's going into what you would call the Dark Ages, right? Right. So when you go into that history, when the Western Roman Empire fell, you had so-called Negroes ruling in Europe.
And Salakia, and look at this. Multiple invasions by barbarian tribes. Really?
Right.
Really?
Right. Barbarian tribes.
Mama's a barbarian.
Right. So the thing is, like we were saying, like when you go into that revelation, that's going into the time where we had rule in Europe, right? Because you had what's that book that we got now? The Russian icons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had different so-called black people ruling in Europe during that time period, right? Because if you look at a lot of the history about the Roman Empire after 476 AD, a lot of the rulers in Rome and Europe and different parts of Europe was our people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you said that it said Satan will be chained up for 1,000 years and then he will be loose for a little season and shall deceive the world. So that time period is going into where you had the Renaissance, right? And then you had famous artists and painters like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, right? And they was whitewashing all the images during that time period, right?
Hey, Salakia, definitely over there in the Ireland area. We were real heavy over there.
Yeah, you had different so-called black rulers all throughout Europe during that time, right? Right. So that was going into the split of the Roman Empire, right? And then you had that 1,000 years, and then after that 1,000 years, Esau came back into power, right? Like I said, the Ottomans came over into power over over the Eastern Roman Empire. And really, when you look at America today, we really just an extension. The people that's ruling America is an extension of the Greco-Roman Empire, right? That's all this modern day America is, right?
Hey,
Con, and
Salakia.
also wasn't it so like
Yeah, yeah. I
wasn't
was
that
gonna say
also
real
during
quick.
the time to where they scattered us throughout the four corners during that Roman after Roman captivity? That's when all that scattering us all over the four corners happened.
Well, we were scattered before that time. We've been scattered throughout different time periods.
Yeah, I was talking about it, but it really pushed it forward during that time also, didn't it? Even
I
more.
mean, even during the time of the Greeks. But yeah, I see what you're saying though.
Hmm.
Um,
Like after Christ.
but what you had, Ron?
No, I was gonna say, when y'all was going into the Ottoman Turks, uh, um, you know, that Eastern uh, uh, Roman Empire, they had their wars with the Ottoman Turks for a long time under Sultan Mehmet the second, I believe it was Sultan Mehmet. Um, and even when you go into some of them Ottoman Turks are actually Edomites.
Right.
So when you go, yeah, Khan. So understanding that because they were Muslims and they were going unto the ways of Islam doesn't change
Hmm.
the fact that those was actual Edomites by nationality. And I recommend if you listening to this, if if you want to learn more about the wars between the Byzantine Empire and the Ottoman Turks, there's a series called The Ottoman Empire on Netflix, and it goes it's like a series. I think it's like in season 4, but ultimately they go into the wars between the two kingdoms, but the same nation. They're both Esau Edomites, but they're two kingdoms. And it goes into what Yashwan was talking about earlier about that port. And I was just briefly listening in because I was just kind of putting the kids to sleep. But it goes into those ports and those canals that was heavily fortified. And if you can get
Hmm.
through one of those ports on the eastern side, right there in Constantinople, you kind of, you had an advantage over every other nation. A lot of trade, a lot of money was being traded through there, and so a lot of these Ottoman Turks, they realized if we cut off the supply routes going into Constantinople, you can weaken the Byzantine Empire's finances, which is heavily important because what ends up happening is you see a lot of conversion to Islam. And if it wasn't for them wars, a lot of the world would have been Muslim over Christians.
Con.
Hmm.
But that's it on that. I just want to just bring that out. But yeah, you're doing a good job bringing that out.
All praise to the Most High. Like we said, all we doing is going into the history, right? Because when you go into these prophecies, Daniel, he's not going into detail to tell you exactly who these kingdoms are, right? But when you know world history, then it gets kind of playing upon tables. You know who it's talking about, right? So we going into the split. He said that kingdom will be divided, and what was that? Daniel 2:40 or 40?
Con.
Let's go back to that in
Yeah, 2
Daniel.
and 40. 2 and 40. No, 41. 41. 2 and 41. Want me to read it?
Yeah, can you read 40 again? Can you read verse 40 again?
Con. Verse 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. Verse 41. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Continue.
Con.
Verse 42. And as the toes and the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of them of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay.
Right, so let's stop right
And
there.
it,
So we just went over, different points in history, right? So we went into the head, the golden head, going into the Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonian Empire. We went into the silver, going into the Persians and the Medes, the Achaemenid Empire, right? We went into the brass, which represented Alexander the Greek and the Greek Empire, right? And then we went into the iron, going into the Roman Empire, right? So like we say, you during the beginning, you had the reign of Caesar Augustus, Tiberius, right? You had different rulers of the Romans that's mentioned in the what you call the New Testament, right? Then we went into the history about the split of the Roman Empire when they talk about the feet that was mixed with the iron and the clay, right? You had the split of the Roman Empire. You had the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, right? Then you had the Western Roman Empire fell around 476 AD, right? But you still had the Byzantine. They ruled for 1,000 years until they came back into power, right? So now we finna get into this last part. So let's go to verse 44 and let's read down.
Verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
Right, right. So now let's get into this part because remember, Daniel said he saw a stone that was cut out without hands, and he said it smote the
Con,
image at the feet, and then it destroyed the whole image. Right. So that stone that Daniel said is talking about another kingdom that's gonna come after all these other kingdoms. But he said this kingdom is not gonna be destroyed. Right. So we all
con,
know what this kingdom is going into, right? So let's get
con.
can somebody give me Second Esdras 6 and 8? And then can somebody give me that in Isaiah 45 and 17? Right. So in verse 44 again it says, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. So we just read about all the destruction of these other kingdoms, right? Babylon was destroyed by Persia. Persia was destroyed by Greek, right? And then you had the Greeks that was taken over by the Romans, right? But the Lord said this kingdom that he go set up in the end is not going to be destroyed, right? It says, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever, right?
Uh,
So when you look at the fourth kingdom that Daniel spoke about, the kingdom of iron going into the Romans, you would know that the Romans was ruled by Esau, right? The Greeks and the Romans, the Greco-Roman Empire. And like I said, the America society that we live in today is just an extension of the Greco-Roman Empire. right? We still being ruled by the Greeks and the Romans to this very day, right?
Big con.
So what kingdom is coming after this kingdom, right?
Oh, I got the answer right here.
Because a
All
lot of
praise.
people think America is gonna rule forever, right? They think this
La
is it, right? They think this is it, right? But Daniel was saying that the Lord is gonna set up another kingdom, but this kingdom not gonna be destroyed, right?
Con.
So let's see what kingdom that's talking about, right?
The book of Second Esdras, chapter 6, verse 8. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau.
Right.
For Esau is the end of the world,
Uh-huh.
and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth.
Right. So it said for Esau is the end of the world, right? And that word world, we know that's going into a government or order, right? When you go
Mm-hmm.
into that Greek word cosmos, right? Right. So when you look at Esau, Esau had Esau been ruling for a while now, right? Like I said, you had the Greeks, the Romans, right? You got this modern day America, right? So Esau been in power for a long time,
That's right.
right? But it said that Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. So the scriptures is telling you that after Esau's reign, Jacob, which will be the Israelites, is gonna have their kingdom, right? So that was symbolizing during the time when Jacob and Esau was born. Because Esau came out first, but it said Jacob hold the hill, he was holding on to the hill of Esau. So that's symbolizing that right after Esau had his time to rule, that Jacob was right behind him,
All
right?
praise it.
So let's get that in Isaiah 45. Because remember, Daniel said that this last kingdom that was gonna reign, it wasn't gonna be destroyed. So this gonna be the only kingdom that's gonna reign forever, right? This last ruling kingdom is gonna be the only kingdom that's gonna rule forever, right? So whoever got that in Isaiah 45.
It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 17. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end.
Right, so it says that Israel shall be saved, right? And it says Israel is gonna be a world or a government without end, right? So that's talking about that kingdom that's not gonna be destroyed. Going back to
Come,
that in Daniel the second chapter, right? Because like we said, the
come.
Egyptians they was destroyed. The Lord sent plagues upon Egypt, right? The Assyrians they was destroyed. The Babylonians was destroyed by the Persians, right? The Persians was destroyed by the Greeks, right? The Greeks was destroyed by the Romans, right? And these modern day Romans gonna be destroyed by the children of Israel, right?
Oh, praises.
So let's go back to that in Daniel chapter 2, right?
I'm gonna start again at 44.
And let me bring this out in Daniel chapter 7 and verse 18, right? So this the book of Daniel chapter 7 verse 18. It says, but the saints, and we all know the saints is the Israelites, right? But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever, right? So remember, Daniel said the last kingdom that the Lord was going to set up, it wasn't going to be destroyed. And it said, and it shall stand forever, right? So that's talking about the kingdom of Israel. So you could read that again, King.
Come, verse 44 of Daniel chapter 2. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure.
Right. So now let's get into this stone, right? So we all know that the last kingdom is talking about the kingdom of Israel, but let's
So,
find out what this stone was. Because remember, Daniel said that this stone smote the image and then it broke the image in pieces, right? So let's find out what this stone represent, right? So can somebody give me Psalm 118 and verse 22? And can somebody give me Acts 1 and 6?
like, what was that? Psalms what?
118 and verse 22.
It's the book of Psalms, chapter 118, verse 22. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes.
Right, so it says the stone, right, and this stone is talking about the same stone that's talking about in the book of Daniel, right?
Come.
It says the stone which the builders refuse is become the head stone of the corner. So this is talking about that same stone in Daniel that smote the image and broke the image in pieces, right? So let's find out what this stone is. Can somebody give me Mark chapter 8 and verse 27?
It's the book of Mark, chapter 8 and verse 7.
Salakia. Give me verse 27 and read down to 31.
Con, the book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 27. And Yahushua went out and his disciples into the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and by the way he asked his disciples, saying unto them, whom do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elias, and others one of the prophets. And he said unto them, but whom shall ye that I am? And Peter answered and said unto him, thou art the Christ. And he changed them that they should tell no man of him.
Says he charged them.
Charged them, Slucky. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. Continue.
Kanye, read verse 31.
Come. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders.
Wait, and
of
be
the
what?
chief
Hold on, read that part again. And be what?
And be rejected of the elders.
So let me go back to this in Psalm, right? Going back to that stone. This Psalm 118 and verse 22. It says, the stone which the builders refuse is become the head stone of the corner, right? So this is talking about Yahawashi, right? Because he was that stone that was refused, right? Let's read that again. verse 31.
Verse 31. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again.
Right.
And he's and
So
like,
that's it on that. And so we finding out that stone that it's talking about is YAHAWAH'S, right?
mm-hmm.
So can somebody still holding that in Acts 1:6?
This is a book. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Acts chapter 1. You said Acts chapter 1
and 6.
Yeah, hold that. Yeah, just hold that, and somebody give me this one in Ephesians 2:20. Let me get Ephesians 2:20, and hold that in Acts. I'm gonna read that one next.
It's the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 20. And are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahawashi Hamashiach himself being the chief cornerstone.
Being the what?
The chief cornerstone.
Right, so it's telling you that YAHAWAH'S is that cornerstone, right? That same stone that it's talking about in the book of Daniel that smote the image and destroyed the image, right? Like we read in Psalm, right? Going back to that Psalm 118:22, the stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner, right? And we just read that the chief cornerstone is talking about YAHAWAH'S in the book of Ephesians, right? So can you read that again? And then we go get that in Acts 1:6.
This is the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 20. And are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahawashi Hamashiach himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple of the Lord.
Right. So that's it on
and
that.
Come.
Let me get that in Acts 1:6.
It's the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 6. When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel?
Right. It says restore again the kingdom to Israel, right? So even back then, they was asking YAHAWAH'S, is now our time to have the kingdom, right? And this was thousands of years ago, right? So going back to that in the book of Daniel, that stone that Daniel seen that smote the image and that destroyed the image is talking about the nation of Israel, which is led by YAHAWAH'S, the king of Israel, right? Because even back then, the disciples knew that YAHAWAH'S was gonna be the king of Israel, and he was gonna one that was gonna be that was gonna deliver Israel, right, and give us the kingdom, right. So it says, when they therefore would come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time? So they was asking him back then. It says, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? Right? So he is that one that's going to restore the kingdom of Israel. Right? Like we said, he is that chief cornerstone. That same stone that is talking about in the book of Daniel. Right? He is the one that the Most High set up to be the king and the ruler over the nation of Israel. Right? So that stone that is talking about in Nebuchadnezzar's dream is talking about YAHAWAH'S. Right? And when it said that, matter of fact, let's go back to that in Daniel 2. Right? Let's go back to that in Daniel 2.
We're going to start at 45, 46.
Slap. Yeah, read, can you read 44 again?
Come. Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms,
Right,
and
so
it
let's
shall
stop right
stand
there.
forever.
Right, so it says it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. Right. So can somebody give me
Come,
Revelation chapter 2 and start at verse 26? Revelation 2 and 26. Because like we said, that stone is talking about the nation of Israel, which is going to be led by Yahawah, which is that chief cornerstone. Right. So could somebody give me that in Revelation 2 and 26?
this is the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 26. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works until the end, to him will I give power over the nations.
Wait, power over the what?
Over the nations.
Right, so that's going back to that in Daniel. It says, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, right? So let's read on.
Come. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken into shivers, even as received of my father,
Right, so
even
it
as I
says,
received of my father.
so it
Come.
says, as a potter's vessel shall they be broken in shivers. So that's talking about that stone and Daniel that smote the image and destroyed the image, right?
Come.
Because it said Yahawah and the Israelites, we go rule over these nations with a rod of iron, and like a potter's vessel, they're gonna be broken in shivers, right? So that's the vision that Daniel broke down when Nebuchadnezzar had that dream, right? So it says, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever, right? So let's read the rest of that.
Come. The book of Revelation, chapter 2 and
No,
verse
read
28.
Daniel.
Oh, the rest
No,
of Daniel?
let's go. Yeah, let's
Go
read
back to
verse
Daniel.
45.
Okay. Come. Verse 45. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the
Right,
great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter.
right. So let's
And the
stop right
dream
there.
is
So it
certain.
said that the stone it broke in pieces, the iron, right, the gold, the brass, and the clay and the silver, right. So that's them nations being broken into shivers. That's them nations being
Come,
ruled with a rod of iron, right? Like we just read in Revelation, right? That's talking about the rulership of the Israelites of Jacob, right? Because remember back in Daniel 2 and verse 35, it says, then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain. Right? So we know that mountain is talking about Yahawah and having being the king over the nation of Israel, right? Because
come,
we the mountain of the Lord, right? Like you read about in Isaiah 2 and 2, in Micah the 4th chapter, right? It says, and filled the whole earth, right? So let's go back to that and let's read Daniel chapter 2, verse 46.
come. The book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 46. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an oblation of sweet odor upon him, and sweet odor upon him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret.
Right. So let's stop right there.
Then
So
the
even Nebuchadnezzar was a heathen, a Babylonian,
Mhm.
and the Lord got this heathen worshiping the God of the Israelites. Right. So
Con.
Nebuchadnezzar got on his knees and he bowing down to Daniel. He told Daniel, he said, "Look, y'all God." He said, "Y'all God is a Lord of Kings, a God of gods." Right. Because the Babylonians, they had many different idols and gods that they worship, right? So even in captivity, the Most High is showing these other nations that only the Israelites have a true and living God, right? So let me get this real quick in Ezekiel 37, right? This the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, and I'm gonna read verse 28. It says, "And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel," right? "When my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore." So even the heathens gonna know that the Most High sanctify Israel, right? Even during the time of Egypt, like we read in Genesis 41, right? All the power that Pharaoh and all his magicians and all his wizards, all the power that they had, they couldn't interpret none of the dreams and visions. They had to go to Joseph, which was an Israelite, right? Because only the Israelites have that type of power with the Most High God, right? So even Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, which was a heathen, he had to get on his knees and worship the true and living God, right? Right. So when it said
Con.
that
Precept.
stone, that's like it said when that stone struck the image and destroyed the image. That's talking about the Israelites and YAHAWAH'S. We go rule over all these different nations, right? So get your precept, King.
Con. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verse 23. "And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which ye have profaned in the midst of them, and the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, saith the Lord God, when I shall sanctify in you before your eyes."
Right. So it says even the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, right? And that's what
Con.
Nebuchadnezzar did, right? He told Daniel, he said, "Look, y'all God is the God of gods, right?" And he said the same thing to the Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael in the next chapter when he threw him into the fiery furnace, right?
The fiery furnace. Con.
And then the Most High delivered them out of the furnace. He said, "Hey, y'all God is the true and living God," right? So let's finish this off, and that's gonna be it.
You still at Daniel?
Con, let's finish the rest of chapter 2, and that's gonna be it.
Okay. Con. Verse 48. "Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king."
Right.
Continue.
No, that's it on
Chapter
that.
3. Come,
That's it. All right,
come.
right. So that basically that's gonna be the end of that, right? Right. So we just went over Daniel chapter 2, going into Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the image and all the different kingdoms that rule after the Babylonians, right? So Ethan, can you pull that image up one more time before we close it out? Right.
Con, which one do you want? You want this one?
Hey, I want all. Hey, you pulled up about 15 of them.
I
You
mean,
pulled up.
this is the good one that we like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pull up the first one, then we'll pull that one up last. Right? So this is the image that Nebuchadnezzar, this is just a visual, to give everybody a visual of the image that Nebuchadnezzar seen in his dream. So we went over the history, we went over the precepts, right? So that head of gold was going into the Babylonians, the silver going into the Persians and the Medes, right? Then you had the brass going into the Greek Empire, right? Then you had the iron going into the Roman Empire, and then you had the feet that was made out of iron and the clay going into the split of the Roman Empire. And then we went over that the stone, right? That's representing the nation of Israel, which is gonna be led by YAHAWAH'S HaMashiach, right? That's gonna destroy the image, and it's gonna be looking like that, right?
That stone right there, right?
Right. That's the Mount Zion,
That's what we're looking
man.
for.
Right, destroying all these nations, man. Ruling over them with a rod of iron.
Then we're gonna go up to the face and be like, "You got knocked the out."
Con, right? We gonna rule them with a rod of iron. They gonna be broken to pieces. Right?
Damn.
Right. So Lord willing, we can continue this next time and probably go over another chapter in Daniel. Right. So we already went over the Daniel chapter 8 about the ram and the goat. We just went over Daniel chapter 2 about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, right? So maybe next time we go over another chapter in Daniel, right? But that's gonna be it for me though, unless somebody else got another precept. Well, that's it, man. We gonna close it out, man. Right. So again, first and foremost, man, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahawah by Hashem Yahweh Shah. Hey, Lord willing, our brothers and sisters can learn something from this, man. Hey, the water and shalom to all the brothers and sisters that tuned in. Right. Again, this brother Yashwan Ban Yahawada.
Brother Malak Banya Hawada.
It's Brother Joshua, the Gadite.
His brother Ephraim. Want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh by Yahweh Shai.
His brother Aniel.
Yeah, we are.
God, this brother Yashuv.
There he is.
Then we got is Rom still on? Is a mock where Mock at?
I think our mock fell off. He probably had something to do.
Is Rom still on here?
I think the kids put him to sleep.
All right, well, that's it, man. Hey, we gonna give a mighty Kwame Ashala to the nation of Israel and Shalom. Hey, take us out of here, Ephraim.